So, I want to tell you about a new study that's coming from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And get this, it found a child is most likely to go missing during the summer months. In fact, more than 40% of child abductions this year, they're expected to happen in June, July, and August, which is why we want to talk about it this morning and see how we can prevent all of this. Olivia Lamorocco is here from the Phillips Law Foundation to tell us a little bit more about the steps we can all take to keep our children safe. I was just telling you, that is alarming to think that most of that happens in the summer, but it kind of makes sense because kids are at home. But what are those other factors that lead to that?
Other factors, exactly like you said, kids are out of school, they're on vacations, we're in places we don't go to every day, hanging out with friends in malls, trampoline parks, swimming pools, you name it.
And maybe not as many adult eyes on us either at the time, right?
Exactly.
That is just so scary to think about. Okay, so what are some of those ways that this is happening so we know how to stop it and get ahead of it?
Some of the ways they're happening is predators are looking for kids to be, catch them off guard when they're in familiar settings, like maybe a mall, maybe when they're hanging out with friends in a place they always are. One thing to do to look out for predators is to make sure that you're always aware of your surroundings. Kids have a safety plan and they know what to do.
Okay. And what kind of safety plan? Like, what example would you give?
A safety plan is having your children know that where to go, where they are, who to call, what adult is responsible for them. And also, we know don't talk to strangers, but really drill that home so kids know if somebody approaches you and says, I know your mom, I know your parents, how does your child respond? Having those tough conversations is very important.
Okay, and then we got a couple of other ways for you can, ways that you can teach your child ahead of time if something like this happens to, well, really stop it and just to be aware. So this was interesting to me. Okay, the buddy system, yes, that makes sense, absolutely. But teaching them about different abduction methods, that can be a little bit scary. But like you talked about, one of those classic ones that we always grew up with is, I'm a friend of your parents. Are there any other new ways that, these predators are trying to take advantage?
Predators becoming figures of authority, saying, you have to go there. Maybe you're thinking that it is a police officer or a security guard, or you're not really sure if they're an authority figure or not. Stop and ask your parents. You always have to have the approval of that adult that's responsible for you in your life.
Okay.
And things is, children even wearing bright clothes when they go out in public so the adult can always spot them. Those small tips can really help too.
Yeah, absolutely. Olivia, I was wondering, with so many kids being at home now, maybe, right, because it's so hot out, maybe they don't have a chance to go to a mall like you talked about. If they're at home, online seems to be a big place right now where those predators are kind of lurking. What do you tell them about that safety?
Parents have to be hyper vigilant. They have to know who their children are speaking to. I mean, we see, unfortunately, so many cases of children talking to predators on Roblox, different social threads and different games where children are under the impression that they're also speaking to children, and they're not. They're adults, and adults will coach them to meet me here or meet me there. I mean, the end of the story is don't go anywhere or make any plans with somebody that you meet online.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, you think, right, this is never going to happen to my kid. But sadly, it does happen. And I get reminded of that on the highways when we see, the billboards for missing, teens and missing kids. And so I want to ask you, even though it's so hard to think about, if the unthinkable should happen and your child does get taken, what are those first steps you or they should do?
Number one, alert the authorities. Number two, wherever you're at, you should always go into it having a plan, knowing where your children are, and securing the area, calling everybody. If your child has a device on them, you should always be sharing the location. Me, for my children, I have AirTags on them. I always know where their location is. So using the technology prior to going out and having those systems in place is very important.
Yeah, I've got a couple of other tips here on your screen right now, like contacting your network, right? Your friends, neighbors, businesses, just to keep an eye out for them, gather those devices, and then just spread awareness. The more eyes you have, is the better it's going to be. So if we would like to learn more about, just the resources for parents, caretakers, but also for the kids, where can we go?
PhillipsLawFoundation.org. We have resources there. We host billboards for missing children and do a lot of work to help find children who are missing.
Yeah, and then these are also some numbers that you can call, some websites you can go to, missingkids.org, right,
Yes.
where you can try and go and, kind of link up that database with what's going on. It's so hard to talk about this, and I know it's not the most fun thing to talk about, but sadly, we don't live in Candyland, right? And so this is why we want to just warn parents and caretakers out there that there are steps we can take to make sure our kids are safe this summer. Olivia, any parting thoughts before we go?
Thank you for having us, and just keep your kids safe. Be aware.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right, Justin, over to you.